Hello, my name is John Reynolds. On this episode of Extraordinary Life Stories, I'm talking to mission-led entrepreneur Jordan Brompton. Jordan is the trailblazing co-founder of myenergi. She's following her passion for renewable energy and sustainability, relentlessly striving to achieve the myenergi mission to create a kinder, more sustainable future for our planet. What a fantastic purpose. With a real mission-led why driving her, I want to know how she's juggling growing a successful business, making time for her family, and navigating a government U-turn on carbon zero policies. I'm really looking forward to talking with Jordan. Jordan, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me, who is Jordan Brompton?
Still trying to figure that out. But at this moment in time, I'm best known for being the co-founder and the CMO of a company called myenergi.
So take me back to a young Jordan growing up. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was into dancing, I was into singing. I thought I was going to be, I don't know, a dancer for Beyonce or something like that.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't quite know what. No. But I was always a real hard worker. I grew up watching my parents not have very much. They're really hard-working parents. And I didn't ever want to put any pressure on them, like added pressure on them. So as soon as I was old enough to get a job, like paper round, Sunday market, 12, 13 years old, I started working and getting my own cash. I was always like wanting my own independence, I guess. So I think my entrepreneurial spirit came from around that age of wanting to detach from my parents. And it was more not detached, but just not add pressure onto them, because I saw how hard they were working. Always provided me a lovely life, amazing life. I never felt like I went without anything. But I understood the value of a pound, and I understood how hard my dad and mum had to work for it. So, and also you wanted that financial independence by the sound of it. Yeah, one to really protect them, and also to have your own. Yes, yeah. So I started hustling from a young age, and then going into early teens and late teens, I would do like 3 or 4 jobs to keep the money coming in, and I'd burn myself out because I'd be working in a hairdresser's in the day, going to a restaurant straight after that, working in a nightclub after that, and then starting the whole cycle again. And I found that like working and doing that I got a lot of life skills and good communication skills. Wasn't very good at school, struggled to focus, didn't know what I wanted to do, didn't want to go to uni. Uni wasn't an option for me. I grew up in Grimsby. It was, it wasn't presented to me as an option. It was you'll be a hairdresser or you'll be in travel and tourism. But I had this naive, innate feeling that I was born to do something more. I just didn't quite know how to tap into it yet until I started working. So work was where I started to blossom and get my independence. And I always very ambitious, like I've got a natural ambition. So I would, just try and work my way up in every job, and I'd try and take on every role. And if I saw someone doing a good job at something, I'd step in and help, or I'd go in as a waitress, but I'd end up like running the place because I'd be like, like, why aren't you doing that? Or why aren't you doing that? And I'll just step in and do that. I'm not naturally one of those people that takes on the I'll do it approach.
And a big thing for you is sustainability. You're on a mission to. So when did that start? And when did you turn all that experience and entrepreneurial spirit into ultimately what you're doing now?
So weirdly, I'm a bit of an anarchist. Okay. You wouldn't expect that answer. But it was like, I've always liked to break away from the system or look at systems and think, how do you innovate around that? And disruptor. So when I met Lee's my business partner. He's the CEO of myenergi and other co-founder. He was an electrician out fitting solar panels, and he invented this little gizmo to keep the solar power that he was fitting on people's homes, keep the power within the home, so essentially take you off grid and take you energy independent just by heating your water, because people couldn't afford batteries back in the day when solar was on the boom. So he invented this little device, and I saw this ad and heard about a job going in admin. And obviously I'm going to just sit around and do admin. I straight away started doing sales, and I was like, how many are you selling? I could sell more of them, because he was only selling to like local electricians. So then I'd be like, how do you get in front of more electricians? Wholesalers. So then I started banging down the doors of the wholesalers trying to sell these little devices for Lee. But it wasn't even because like I saw the bigger picture of what Lee was trying to do, even more so than he did. Like I saw the opportunity more than he did, I think, of energy independence and what that meant, and capturing that, keeping that power in your own home and taking the power back of your electricity. And I just started forming this whole narrative around that. And then when we developed the car charger, the Zappi car charger, which was the first in the world to use solar energy and balance the home. So if you've got a shower on or something like that, it would lower the power to the car. So we were just looking at the market, like this EV boom was coming, how do we make it as sustainable as possible so we don't fall down the same trap as what we did with diesel and things like that, where you get told something's good for you and then you're like, is it really?
Yes.
Or is this the next thing?
A political play.
Yeah, but when I saw that, actually, no, I believed in solar, I believed in being self-sustaining, I believed, and then I was like, how do we make that greener and greener and greener? To the point where you eliminate every argument that electric vehicles aren't good.
Yeah, and it's
that's
my
passion.
I can tell. I love it. And is there a drive there that really is to protect the planet? And because there's a real opportunity there from a business point of view, from an entrepreneur point of view. But is it a helpful byproduct, or is it a massive thing for you that also you are actually not only helping the planet but also helping people that, in context of unaffordable bills right now, the conversation we had earlier before filming, where people are even choosing to eat or heat. I mean, how can that be the case in the UK, a developed country? So how are you meshing that all together to form that passion?
It's a massive mesh of all of that. All of that. I can see like the end game of where solar power or renewable energy is no longer a luxury. It's more of it's a necessity. So I'm like, how do we make it affordable? And to have a startup, you've got economies of scale and things like that. We've got to figure that out. And I think it's an ever evolving. That's like the end game, is that everybody's got solar in my mind and everybody's got energy independence. But it's one step at a time. So one step at a time to get there. And it's also about educating and pulling people onto the journey. But it's absolutely like decarbonisation is a massive passion of mine. The fact that it's helping the planet is an added bonus. For me, it was more about energy security and energy independence and this choice of removing fuel poverty. That was my initial drivers.
Sure. And
then the climate crisis has been like obviously growing over the past few years, and the electric vehicles and the route to net zero has all been part of that and feeding into it. And obviously it's very important, but I'm also not naive that building an electric car and building batteries and building solar power still don't have a carbon footprint. Of course they do. It's all about the longevity of it and making sure that it's that you're making the best use of it, and then it's making sure that it's recycled and things like that. So it's not all from a climate approach. It's obviously very helpful that it is. I'm not naive enough to think that it doesn't have a carbon footprint, but it's surely better than drilling oil out of the ground, using a lot of energy to process it, and then burning it for no reason into nothing.
Because that's all we knew however many years ago. You should be evolving.
We knew that, exactly. And what are we going to do? Like, if oil runs out, what are we going to do? Sit on our hands and
it's just a finite resource.
Like, we've got to evolve. So it takes a mix of all sorts. So I'm very much like, I don't like being in a camp of like, you drive a petrol, you're a bad person, you don't love the polar bears.
No.
I'm like, let's all talk of ways of evolving together and have a grown-up conversation and stop this divisive nature that's forming. So that's what I try and do.
Yeah, and that whole evolution, being smarter, working with advancements of time and knowing it's a finite resource, let alone the fact it's awful to the planet. And actually, I'm going to annoy you now because I'm going to bring up the government, our current government, and the fact that you had effectively their support with the carbon zero. You were probably working towards that. That was really in your favour. And then they U-turn. We're filming now January 24. So at the end of last year, you just done congratulations on a brilliant raise, all focusing on growth. And then, something like that happens where the lack of consistency, we should all be pointing forwards, the world, let alone the country. How do you deal with that?
Like, it's not been nice, not going to lie. And we've been victims of it a few times when we was growing the business. The first time round, the little devices that I was telling you about that puts the power to the hot water, that was all in the solar boom. And then they pulled the feed-in tariffs pretty quickly, and all of our customers went out of business overnight. Everybody thought the market was dead, and it was me and Lee that was like, no, we still believe in this technology and we still believe in this, and that's why we wanted to have the dream of restarting again with myenergi. But I really thought that the government had got it this time, like I felt. And after COVID and everybody wanting cleaner air and the switch to EVs, I thought, it's a lot as we ploughed all of our profit like into growth. Like every penny has gone back into the business. And then, like, as you say, raising cash, and there's been component shortages all over the world for like microchips. So we overinvested in that so that we'd never get caught short, because we had this massive order book.
All of these are smart decisions at the time.
Yeah. And then if the market's like, it's not declined, but it's plateaued in this last year. And when you've built a business to potentially like go even bigger, or IPO or something like that, you've then got to make adjustments. And it's the biggest craziest time that I've ever been through as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, and it's a lot to handle.
I
And we're still working through
Yeah.
that, but it's also like it's not a terrible doom and gloom story because the business is still super successful and we're just repositioning for growth.
Yeah.
It's just a challenging macro environment for everybody at the minute.
know.
Every founder that I speak to, every entrepreneur that I speak to is working 10 times harder for the same result.
Yeah, ditto. I mean, property, you know, the EPC ratings and the fact that
Yeah.
properties that were not going to be in a position where you could actually rent them as a landlord, you know, so people were selling properties and people were terrified, didn't have the cash flow, the actual cash to spend on the properties for the solar panels and so on.
Exactly.
And then only to find that the whole thing's U-turned and didn't need to worry about it, which, you know, in some cases has helped people, but the bigger picture is all of that was a necessity. Let's do that. Let's encourage the green revolution, and then the government steps back. And you're sort of touching on something that's really close to me, that business is hard.
Yeah.
You know, and from an entrepreneurial point of view, which we both are, and the kind of the Instagram images of these people sort of talking to the camera saying, oh, just, you know, be your own boss. It's great. Look at me in Dubai and so on. But actually, you know, you've had to pivot a number of times. You're going to have to do it again.
Yeah.
You know, what advice would you give to someone starting out in business as an entrepreneur who's successful?
Yeah, my number one advice is just be scrappy, like be ready to fight every day, because it's just problem after problem that you've got to get over. I used to have this vision of entrepreneurship that you see it online and you think you've made it and that's got a successful business. I didn't realise that if you built a business to be a certain, like even at the top of your game as market leader, it's more difficult to maintain that position than it is to rise to that position. Although you're facing all your challenges at that time, and each one of them, each step has been hard, just actually hanging on to it is like even harder. So I just think be prepared to be scrappy. And then I touch on a subject that everybody thinks is a bit taboo or don't like to talk about, but as a founder, and if I hadn't done this, I think I would have literally been in a mental institution, or I would have breakdown, because I took some money off the table. And I think that was the best decision I ever made. I call it sleep money. I just had a little bit of money out so that if everything went wrong, I wasn't going to be in a terrible place. And that's allowed me just to make smarter decisions, but also not freak out or make totally irrational decisions, because I'm quite an emotional person as well. And all this is very new, like this managing a business of this size. And I think sometimes you can panic and want to pull the emergency cord, but if you're a little bit personally cushioned, it definitely helps your mental clarity.
And you need to have that. And I think, you know, you're grafting as an entrepreneur to make money. You're trying to make a social impact. You're trying to do all the things that the business does, but you went into this to make money. So there's no one that can take that away from you. And actually you're a better person for it if you're mentally focused. Yeah. And I'd love to ask you that, actually, because it's talked about so much in the world of business, that sort of positive mindset and being physically fit as well. So I'd love to know what you do, both to sort of, you know, you could say you're just immersed in the business and the problem solving itself. Is there anything you do to kind of practice positive mindset and keep physically fit?
Yeah, physically fit has taken a back burner for quite some time now, because I've got a 4-year-old as well, and I used to love dancing. I'd do my Zumba. I like anything that's sort of not, it's like cheat exercising where you don't feel like you're exercising, but you are. Like,
but it's fun as well, right?
Yeah, when it's fun. But I haven't done that in a while, I can't even lie. So at the minute for me, it's like getting out for a walk with a podcast on. Like that's where I get all of my information. I love podcasts.
They say that's the best form of exercise, though.
Yeah.
If you do nothing else and you walk, it's the best thing.
Because then I'm getting a bit of nature, a bit of fresh air, grounding myself a bit, not looking at my phone, although I've got a podcast going on. And I do try and meditate a little bit on an evening. Like I'll put on a YouTube sort of like mental clarity, help you get into a deep sleep if I've had a really hectic day. So it's just something, a voice to focus on. And then that's what I sort of do to look after my mental health a little bit, but physical, I really want to get into ice baths. I wish I could tell you that I was doing that, but I'm not at the minute. I'm looking at getting one. I go to my local gym and I'll get in the cold pond water, and it's hell. But it does make you're not thinking about anything for that split second, and that's a nice break.
Yeah.
So I'm looking to get into that more, but nothing inspirational for you other than just trying to get by.
I love that. I mean, it's just so talked about. And the other thing as well, this whole starting at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, in the morning. Do you do that?
Nope.
Yeah, cool.
No.
I mean, kids wake you up anyway, right?
Yeah,
So
I'd love to be that person, but it's like 7 o'clock alarm goes off and I'm like, oh.
It's actually really refreshing to have that conversation. I try and do a workout every morning. But it's hard and it's not always practical, right?
No.
And then there's a little voice in the brain. We've all got this inner voice,
Yeah.
business person. We're like, oh, you didn't do that.
Oh, God, yeah.
But sometimes it's just not.
The voices in the head are like horrible to you, aren't they? They're just constant. Right?
And you touched on it, right? I mean, being in business, particularly as an entrepreneur, shareholders, growth, and then trying to have a life, trying to do the walk, and trying to be a good mum and a good wife.
Yeah.
How do you juggle that?
It's hard. It's really, really hard, and it's meant you tear yourself into shreds. But I just try my best every day. I'm still not as present as I'd like to be because sometimes it's so hard. You'll know this as being an entrepreneur. If you've had a really hectic day and then you come home, like literally open the door and Bonnie's like, "Mommy, play with me."
Yeah.
And it's like those words. I'm like, all I want to do is play with her and be engaged, but I also just want to slump on the sofa and not talk. And then like you get home,
there's
to
a
the husband,
different Jordan that's got to come out and
and then I think I look at my phone and I think I've had texts off friends that I haven't replied to for a few days, and then I think, oh God, I said yes to this when I was feeling extroverted and confident, and now I don't want to do it, and I'm like having a breakdown. It's like every day is just you're just figuring it out, and when there's so much pressure on at work, you can get a bit irrational. You just have to. I take myself for a walk. I like put on some music or something, and I think, so, come on, sort your head out. Like, it's fine. And then on a weekend, I'll make sure that I definitely spend good quality time with my daughter and my husband, and that always just makes me feel better.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I'm both away from the family now, London and so on. And then, just as well, I don't say support a football team as long as then it would be a whole different level job. But just those weekends are precious. And the time I can get in the week, you've got to do it. You've got to make a conscious effort. And actually, I'm intrigued, when you do go for your walk and listen to podcasts, what do you listen to?
I listen to a right mix. It depends if I want to really switch off and just listen to like nothingness. I'll listen to Call Her Daddy, which is just a funny podcast where she gets people, celebrities on and chats about all sorts of raunchy stuff. It's quite funny. And then I listen
escapism
to
it's
escapism because it's nothing. I don't have to connect to it. But if I want to learn, I'll listen to Beating Your Jeans, which I find is a really interesting podcast with Dr. Doug Lisle. He's amazing. I listen to Jordan Peterson's podcast. I listen to Michaela Peterson's podcast. I listen to Joe Rogan. I listen to Stephen Bartlett.
Yeah.
So it just depends what sort of mood I'm in. It depends on the guest.
I do.
And Fern Cotton, I like Fern Cotton's Happy Place as well.
Place, yeah. And I've listened to Elizabeth Day, How to Fail.
Yeah. Quite
recently, and that's been really good for me because this whole entrepreneurial business side of things, where there's always a fear of failure in terms of how I was coming through. I wouldn't try something because what if you fail? And so into that embracing of the fact that actually the only way you're going to learn is by failing. So have you had that experience in business, in life, where you can almost identify that if something that went wrong hadn't happened, you wouldn't be where you are now?
Oh yeah, so many times. I'm trying to think of a specific example, but one was when COVID happened. We were nearly going to shut everything down and mothball the business, and it was a big decision, because we didn't know which way the government was going to go. We didn't know what it was, but there was the gut feel to actually lean into this. The government has said manufacturing can stay open. We'll make sure everybody else is working from home, and we'll actually invest in components. And I think if we hadn't have done that, which we very nearly didn't, we nearly just bunkered down and thought, we'll ride this wave and wait until open the curtains and come out. But we decided to lean into it and invest in that time. And actually, when the market took off and we were best served,
we were well placed.
Yeah, we were well placed to deal with it. And I think there's been scenarios where that's a success story, but we almost didn't. And I'm trying to think of explicit examples where I felt like a failure. I guess when we've had to readjust the business and if we've had to let people go, that's never ever easy. It's I take it so bad, and I feel
you're a proper people person, aren't you? So you're a team.
It consumes my entire mind, and I feel like the biggest failure. And it's I try so hard to separate it because people that are seasoned entrepreneurs and business owners just say that's just business. It's not personal. It's just what you have to do. You have to cut an arm off to save the body.
And that's the brutal side of being an entrepreneur as well, isn't it? You have to make those decisions.
Yeah.
And actually, the business could fail if you don't. And so actually, then you're not being a good business person. But it's hard.
It's so hard, and that's the biggest thing where I mentally feel like a failure. But sometimes like you say, you've got to lose a limb to save the body.
You explain that really well. And sitting here now, you ultimately have been incredibly successful, and you know the trajectory is exciting.
Yeah.
How do you define success?
Yeah, I find it uncomfortable when you call me successful. It's weird because
I
I'm
knew
like,
you would.
yeah, I'm like, am I?
Well, you're on your journey.
Yeah, I'm
but
on a
if you
journey.
stop now, and anyone that knows you, we know mutual friends and so on,
Yeah.
and I can tell you this, you know, I enjoy telling you this, you know, their opinion of you is, oh, she's a trailblazer, she's amazing, what she's doing is incredible,
Yeah,
and that's because
that
of who you are.
uncomfortable.
No, I know, I'm making it more uncomfortable, but it's a compliment.
Thank you.
But I don't know if you've stopped to actually think, there's almost two questions. How do you define success?
Yeah.
In context of probably business and personal, because they might be slightly different.
I think personally it's always freedom. I think just freedom to be able to make choices, freedom to be able to take time off if you needed to, freedom to be comfortable financially.
Yeah.
For me, that's success. It's not like, oh my God, I need a Ferrari or I need this, I need that. I'm not about that. I'm literally about time. Time for me is success. If I've got time with my family who I love and my friends and I'm making decisions that I can afford to make, that for me is ultimate success.
Yeah.
Business wise, I literally won't stop until we've got 1 million connected customers in the UK and until we're like #1 energy independence electronics provider around the world, and people understand myenergi. Like for me, business success is way after I'm gone, the myenergi logo is still out there with the big brands. I want it to just be truly recognised forever and ever, and people a legacy, and people to look at it and feel warm and fuzzy to it and not look at it as big corporate evil. I want people to feel good when they see the brand.
And tell me, we talked about off-camera. You mentioned the kind of element of freedom with success. And you mentioned the Ferrari, pink Audi.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. And then
now.
you're laughing. It's fun, right? Business is hard. It's challenging, so on. But there's an element of you where you're like, I can see you're just like, I'm going to make this fun where I can.
Yeah.
Which people can judge you for, right? It's like she looks like you know, she's not doing any work and so on. I bet that drives me. And I've had a bit of that
Twitter.
on my side. It's like you don't know what I.
Yeah.
But in context of social media, the attention that car's got, and the fact that I'm even bringing it up and so on, and how you've looked to try and be fun in business, is that something that you get a bit of a hard time for as well?
Oh yeah, I get challenged on it all the time, and some people might roll their eyes at it or look at it a bit funny, but at the end of the day, I grew up with like not a lot, and it was one of those things. I grew up looking at social media where people were celebrating their success and splashing their cash, and people were worshipping it on reality TV. I'm in that weird like bubble where people were celebrating it, and now it's like taboo. Now it's distasteful. Now it's this and now it's that, and especially for a woman to be doing it. And I'm just a bit like, oh God, I'm not trying to shove it in people's face to show off. It's more of it's a marketing exercise because it gets
We're talking about it now.
We're talking about it. And B, it was for my friends, because I don't see my friends a lot. And every year I throw a themed party. And this year was Barbie, and everybody came dressed as Barbie as Ken. And I was looking to hire a pink Ferrari or something, sports car, to have on the front as a prop. And then I was like, it'll just be fun to wrap my car. And also we'd just partnered with Cinch, and I was really excited about that partnership, and I wanted to do a
business
token.
Angle.
There was a business angle, so I could get some content for it as well and just have a laugh. And my 4-year-old daughter loved it. And now it's black and it's boring, and I want the pink back.
Yeah, well, you should do it.
Yeah, Bonnie actually wants it.
I love the fact that you did it. And you mentioned being a woman. I've got two girls growing up, 12 and 14.
Yeah.
Want them to be able to aspire to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Have you had, of course you're entrepreneurial and so on, and you've smashed your own stigma and kind of glass ceilings, but have you felt that kind of challenge as an extra challenge, being female in business, entrepreneurial side of things?
I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel it, because sometimes I do, and it's but it's not all the time. It's just on occasions, and actually, like, I've never done well with being put in a box. That's where I try and like literally punch my way out of it. If I feel like someone's putting me in a box, I'll try and like break it down. So I don't take it too personally, but then I do understand like there's layers to it. Like as you get in, as I'm going further in business, I do understand that there are still maybe little boys clubs that females aren't invited into, and I think you know, cliques and this and that, and I think there's still a bit of a barrier to be broken down, especially when it comes to funding and things like that. The funding gap.
2% or something of founders.
And I learnt that from Grace Beverley. I didn't know a lot about that because she was obviously blown away that we'd raised this 30 million. I said, well, maybe it's because I've got a founder that's a male. Maybe I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own. And it's a bit like, I don't know. It's something that I want to look more
into. You only know what you know.
Yeah.
Because I've spoken to Debbie Wasco on this program, and I think it was 1.8%
it's terrible.
of female founders get funding. But then I'm trying to work out whether that's because the mindset and the cultural side of things is that they're not in the space to try and raise, or whether there is, you know, the kind of the VC boys club that they're like, you know, or instantly judging from a female point of view. Tricky question to answer, but what advice would you give aspiring female entrepreneurs? You know, my girls growing up, you know, looking at the journey you've had and journey you're on.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them?
I just think like one thing that I've learned is business is there's no blueprint for it really. It's whatever the hell your brain can conjure up and go for it. Like, and don't put yourself or allow anybody to put you into a box. Like I probably was delayed in life until my late 20s and early 30s that I started to feel a bit more inner confidence. When you're a young female, you listen to everything negative that people are saying, you really take that on board. Do not listen to other people's opinions of you and in your box and where you should be. Don't let somebody tell you that you can only be a hairdresser or a travel and tourism person. Like, just don't listen. If you don't know what you want to do, don't worry about that. Just try a lot of things. And if it's not working out for you, move on and don't feel guilty about it. I think people feel like they have to stay in something for so long, but if it's not serving you, move on and keep trying until you find something that there's that little feeling where you go, this is something. I don't quite know what it is, but start leaning into it more. So I just never let someone put you in a box and lean into what feels good and don't think that there's a blueprint. Like the world's evolving, massively evolving. Technology's evolving, business is evolving. You do you and what feels good.
Jordan, thank you so much. You've been absolutely inspirational.
Thank you so much for having me.